My people, it's time to move out. Move out. My people, it's time to move out.
They say that there are 3 levels of conversation. Level 1 is when people talk about other people. Level 2 is when people talk about events. There's nothing wrong with either of those, but this is level 3 studio. Level 3 is when people talk about ideas and what is possible. Welcome to level 3 studio, where we feed your body, feed your mind, and without a doubt, feed your soul. Let's take a toast. All right, now I try to make sure this is truly meaningful when I say this, because it really is from the bottom of my heart, man, that I'm so thankful for everyone choosing to spend their evening here to engage in conversation, to talk about how we can not only improve ourselves, but improve our community. It means the world to me. So cheers.
Cheers.
Hey. All right, so and I'm free to flow outside the lines, but the show will genuinely be broken up into 3 segments. First segment is called Practical and Tactical. So it's kind of, what is it that you do? How do you do it? This idea, there's a million things that get done in a day. What do you choose to do first? And interestingly, what do you choose to do second? The second segment is called True North. So what inspires you, what motivates you, what drives you? The thing I've asked you all to think about is what part of your personal life story has kind of meant the most to you, into your work, into the things that you do. We'll break and enjoy the good eats of Chef Jay over there throwing down. And then we'll close out the segment with close out the show with a segment called Innovator's Toolbox, where you can see here kind of behind Pat, Rob, and myself. We'll go around and everyone will say one thing that they would leave behind in this metaphorical Innovator's Toolbox to improve the experiences of tomorrow's generation. We'll give you the whole show to think about that. You can wrap all your gist into one phrase. What would it be? Cool. So the first segment, Joe, you taking on the first question? Uh-oh. We're gonna get. I'm excited, man. Joe's here to have some fun, man. So the first segment, Practical and Tactical. You know, there's a million things. The world, right? From my perspective, the world is moving faster, right? Things tend to be flying at us left and right, and you know, at the end of the day, you need to make progress and get things done. So Joe, how do you choose to spend your time day to day?
Choose to spend my time day to day. I just be me.
Yeah.
You know, I be who I am. You know, I love to learn. I love to talk to people. I love to engage and learn new things. So that's one part of me. I played in the NFL for 8 years, so I know what it takes to grind and work. And, you know, I carry that along with everything that I do. So that's another part. And then me, man, I'm a big kid. You know what I mean? Like, I like to have fun. I like to laugh, joke. I like to put smiles on people's faces. So I try to keep those 3 things intact. And, you know, that's what I do daily.
What do you feel like has been most transferable from, I'll say, your former life, right, professional athlete, to now? What are the things, in such a rigorous environment, what are the things that are most consistent in your environment today?
I guess you are your own entity. You know what I mean? In the NFL, we're all a part of this group, this culture. And every single player is on the team, which we're trying to come together and trying to do something collectively. But at the end of the day, each individual is their own entity. So you have to carry yourself in a certain manner. You have to, you know, just be presentable to people, and just be yourself at the end of the day.
Take ownership of yourself.
Yeah, take ownership in everything you do, the good and the bad. And that's how you tend to learn, and you tend to adjust.
It's like your own brand, right?
Yeah.
And that relates beyond the field.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, your own brand.
The one thing that, you know, being in the NFL brought was that attention. So, you know, when it comes to, you know, presenting yourself and making sure that, you know, everyone sees you in a good light, because you have not only folks trying to, you know, run up to you, shake your hand, talk to you at every given point, you have kids watching you at the same time. So if you're trying to be a good role model and show them the right way, I mean, you have to do that whenever, you know, the cameras are watching them, whether they're not. And, you know, try to be the same way you are in front of people behind closed doors.
Man, you made me think about ownership, which is such a principle I'm now working to live more towards, and something I don't think was really broken down to me in the way that I now see it. Is that something you think about, man, like ownership? What do you feel like it means to own you, own your brand, as you say, own yourself, own your day? What does ownership look like to you?
Yeah, I don't know, man. really I'm trying to get people away from ownership a little bit, in that I think that sometimes people can become so obsessed with the idea of ownership that they do things that are detrimental to the team or to the organization they're trying to lead. And so I look at it from a little bit different perspective. I think that it is important to have ownership of a brand, but it's also important to understand that sometimes owning something is not owning something too. And so, because it's one thing to have ego, right? I think that to some extent you need the ego, because the ego is what keeps you in the gym that extra little bit to get that extra step. You know what I mean? You're like, you need a little bit of that. And there's some reports out from the Harvard Business Review and other groups that say that most successful people have a little bit of ego. Now, the key word there is a little bit, a little bit, right? Which means you have control of that ego, right? And I think that sometimes there's cases where I've seen that sense of needing to own something get in the way of that thing, whatever it is, be successful.
So we're talking about ownership in terms of like, I've acquired this property business, or ownership where I'm accountable for my actions and what I do, because you can't push back on ownership, because then you have people who just don't take stock in their actions, right? Or how they make people feel, or the things that they do to others.
I was gonna say that. I mean, if you're trying to take ownership, first and foremost, it's taking ownership in yourself and who you are and where you are in the current moment. You know what I mean? Like, do you feel like you're in a space where you're prepared to do, and you're prepared to deal with any and everything that comes your way? If you can't sit there and answer just that plain simple question, then you're not ready to own. You're not ready unless you own who you are and work on yourself any given time, all the time. You're not prepared for that. So ownership, it definitely starts from who you are and what you're about. It's kind of like just reflecting, on a daily basis.
And then I love how y'all basically put the emphasis on ownership and create your own brand, your own entity. But then it's like, how do your core values align with what you do on a day-to-day basis? How do you take that and translate your business entity, your core values, and how do you translate?
How do you enact? Like, what do your values look like in motion?
It looks like who I am, like because I've spent so much time valuing who I am as a person, and taking the time out to really sit there and reflect and meditate and realize where I am in a current spot, and realize where I need to be in order to help affect people.
Try to break that down more, because I think being able to tease out this idea of ownership is important, right? Because I love the idea of like owning your actions, and Jack and I were jamming the other day about this idea of sense of agency. Like, I am in control of the things that are happening, and that I must take ownership of that. But it's like so close to like, now that I've taken ownership, I need everything and it's all mine, and it's razor sharp. So like, how do you like, what are the habits like you do, whether it's to remind yourself that I can own it and give it, or like how do any of you have any examples of like how that actually looks day to day?
So I might just nuance it and say that it sounds like what maybe one thing that would be helpful is to differentiate, to say internal ownership versus external ownership, because I think you guys were talking about internal, and I kind of take it to external.
I mean, it kind of translates right into the external. Like, internally, you have to make sure that you're good. And that's all a part of self-reflection. So if you make sure that you're good internally, then external, you'll be prepared to, like I was saying before, you'll be prepared for whatever the outcome is, whatever you receive, whatever comes your way.
Navigate that a little better.
Right.
One thing that makes me think about, and what I hear a lot, I mean, you read all the time, is like morning routines of like filling up internally to be able to then spend the whole day giving externally. Do you guys have any like really specific morning routines?
It's funny you say that. I've been recently telling myself that I need to change my morning routine, because my morning routine is to check email, check Insta, check Twitter, check the news. Right. And then I said, well, I don't even open my Bible app. And like, I'm a staunch believer that, your relationship with God has to be tight for you to kind of have your sense of purpose and direction. And I'm like, I'm not even reading a word first thing. And it's so easy, right? It's right at my fingertips. It's an app on my phone.
You got
so
all
I've
the
been reading
right there when you see it, right? They give you those.
So I've been redirecting myself this past week on what I check first when I first get up, or what I say to myself.
Have
or
you been
to
able
God
to
when I get up.
have you been able to see that impact? Have you been able to see the difference yet in how your day
Not
unfolds?
yet, because it's only been a couple of days. Okay. So you know how you have those revelations when your birthday comes. My birthday was yesterday, and I was like, what am I doing, right? So I'll let you know in a week or so.
Birthday resolution.
How about you guys? Any morning routines? Whether they're daily or weekly or.
Well, every morning, man, I get up and I get my kids ready for school. So, you know, I prepare lunch, I prepare breakfast in the morning. So, and one thing that I realized that I don't do is do anything for myself, because I'm focusing on making sure that, you know, I get everything together before they have to leave. So, you know, one thing I've been doing is making sure that I eat breakfast, because I'm terrible at eating in the morning. And, you know, they always say that it's important to have breakfast. You know, it's the most important meal of the day. Yeah, that's what they tell you. So, I try to make sure that I'm at least doing something for myself in the morning, because, you know, I definitely have to make sure that my kids is good before they leave.
Absolutely.
Off. Yeah.
Ezzy, what about you, man? Any you just roll with it, man. Yeah. Just roll with it.
I don't really. Yeah. I mean, it's on week by week.
Yeah. I'm trying to more, man. Whenever before this previous role, where now we start at 7, I was in a role we started at 9, and I could squeeze. But when you start at 7, boy, by the grace of God, I'm gonna get up and do something before then. Man, so what do you feel like what works best for you guys right now? Like as you think about maybe the last week or the last month, or however far you're reflecting right now, what has worked really well for you in your days? Is it consistently reaching out and following up with people? Is it are you maybe reading anything or referring to anything that's helped keep you balanced? Or like how do you try to kind of prioritize through your day?
I say maybe that goes a little bit to your earlier question that I don't know if we necessarily answered, of like what do we prioritize in our day, and like how do we structure our days, you know. And I think that it's, you know, at least for myself, I can say that it's less about like I do this at this time and this at this time, because I may have 7:30 a.m. meetings, which if I have a 7:30 a.m. meeting with you, then it means I value you quite a bit, because that means that I had to get up at 6 or 6:30, and I'm not a pleasant person. I've never been a happy person at 6:30 a.m. So I'm unhappy, and so by the time I get to you, I've gotten myself happy. Which means I really care. I really care. But like, since every day can be different, you know, the schedule will change quite a bit. But one of the things that I found really helpful is, you know, to think about in terms of like, okay, so what project do I need to make progress on? And, you know, working backwards from my overall objective. So let's say my overall objective is to help this group be great. Right. So maybe that's not my group. Maybe that's a group that I care about. Right. Or maybe it's an organization I'm on the board of. Yeah. And so I'll set.
Can you be specific with us about any given organization? Like, what's the organization and how do you?
I want this to be evergreen content. So I may not be on the board 2 years from now. But yeah. So like Gilda's Club KC. Right, or 2030 CEO, or Rise Fast, or, you know, there's a lot of groups out there that are doing great things that I want to support. But I have to think about it in my day in terms of things that I have to get done for Wings Cafe, right? And so those are things that, and so it's like the maintenance stuff, which takes up a lot of time, but I try to get done the stuff that's going to progress it forward before I do the maintenance stuff. Because what we found, you know, we've been at the restaurants for 6 years now, I guess. What we found is it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day maintenance that it's easy to lose sight of things that push it forward. And before we knew it, like it had been, 4 or 5 years, and we had spent so much time working in the business that we hadn't spent as much time as we needed to working on the business. You know, and so, you know, that was like an important lesson that we learned. And so before I step foot in the restaurant, you know, like
how do you balance that though? Because my mom always say like clean house, you know, like make sure like before you go out anywhere, your business is good. But I can understand at the same time that especially like something with so many moving parts, if you zone in on that, you may never get out and experience. So how do you like balance like knowing, okay, we've done the things we need to do as an internal organization that we can now go and expand outwards?
So for me, so I alternate days. So generally speaking, I'll have 3 things I try to do a day before I get into the day-to-day type stuff. One of those, and so it may alternate what those entities are that I'm doing things for, but I try to do 3 things for 3 organizations that help drive it forward. And so for me, it was Gilda's Club Kansas City this morning, seeing those emails, trying to figure out, we have an event coming up, so trying to figure out if we can get the cost down for that event, if we can get more tickets sold for the fundraiser that Gilda's KC is doing, and how we can monetize some of the great cancer therapies that they're doing for people. So a lot of people don't realize Gilda's Club Kansas City is Gilda's, so Gilda, Gilda's. So they do nationwide cancer support. So support for people with cancer and with the the families of people with cancer, because it can be a rough transition, right? And maybe they're not in a good socioeconomic state, so maybe it's a rough transition on all fronts, right? And so they're doing something great. And my grandfather, we had some barbecue restaurants in Arkansas, and he died from lung cancer because of that, right? So that means something to me, but I want to see them develop and grow. So that was my first, the first couple emails I woke up, I sent out, trying to figure out how we can monetize some of the work they're already doing to bill insurers. Then second thing I did was I developed our verbiage for the new job ads that we're going to be doing to get new staff, right? And stuff that, using words that would accurately like paint a picture while at the same time getting the right people that we want in the door. And then the third thing I did was, send out reminders to the boards for, 2030 CEO and the other group that I'm working on for a conference to really make sure the board was excited. Both boards were excited for the calls that we have coming up later.
Talent recruitment is hard. It's difficult.
Talent recruitment? Is
Yes.
the talent out there?
I think talent is out there, but I think what Izzy said about accurately depicting jobs and the nuances of like everything isn't glamorous, right?
Yeah.
But when you're trying to attract talent, sometimes you're like, then it's like, well, how do I also let them know that this person is kind of like the second like office manager, and people might not see that as a glamorous role. So I really align with your thinking.
Do you feel like though, if you're honest, you're honest, right? Like I get the thin line you're putting out, but do you feel like if you're honest, you get the right person for that role? You know what I mean? Like versus like the best talent, but now like the position they're in cannot hold the gift that
we've had to change at Prep KC where I work. Like we were searching for a data research evaluation associate, and I think people are drawn to nonprofit, especially in education sometimes, because they want to work with students or want to get out in the field, and that role necessarily isn't that, So we had to make sure that we talk about that in the interview process, so that person is comfortable knowing that this role is extremely important, and it really focuses on the analytics and the research side.
Let's open that more. Language. Language is so powerful. We were talking about code switching and code meshing earlier, the language of how we scope things. Are you guys intentional, and you can continue that part or any other way? Are you, the language you use in your day-to-day, depending on who you're talking to, what you're talking about, do you notice your language changing?
My posture changes. I might greet people differently, but I don't change my language, and I'm trying to be more authentic in that, because I'm starting to view code switching negatively, and this is like a personal transformation that I was talking to Nick about earlier that I've been going through, because I feel like sometimes when we code switch, we're not being our authentic self, and then we're teaching the kiddos and people that come after us not to be their authentic self too, like something might be wrong with your authentic self, that you can't be that. And so I think we have to be really careful about that.
Someone else is influencing me to act this way.
Right. Someone's influencing me, or to act this way is right.
To be appropriate.
It's appropriate, it's right, and I have to be this way to be successful. When we are all super diverse, different backgrounds, different experience, and that experience is what makes me great at what I do in this area. So to deny that is really to deny me and who I am. And it's not going to make me comfortable because when you do code switch, you're like turning on the switch in your head, you're monitoring, certain things.
You know what you're doing.
Yes.
Fitting in into something that
Right.
sometimes you're not necessarily meant to.
And that's the mess. That's anti to anything that we tell young people, right? We're always telling them to be proud of who you are, be yourself. If your name is difficult to pronounce to some people, make sure they get it. Don't give them a nickname. We do these things, but then we don't really behave that way professionally
For ourselves.
I think it's crazy because. Okay. Well, I was gonna say this. I believe it's crazy because like all these environments that we position ourselves in, we learn a bit from every single person, and like over time it adapts. It's like we adapt and we slowly learn and evolve. So it's like it goes back to code switching. It's like how do you stay true to your authentic self, knowing that every single person you talk to, you get a little bit of them.
That's true.
Right.
So I mean, I would say more that I feel like who we are is fluid, right? And so I see it like water. Like just because water's in the glass and it takes that shape doesn't mean that the water's any different than if it's in a 5-gallon jug or if it's in a shot glass or something. Like, the water's still water, right? Even when it's ice, it's still water. And so I see it more from a perspective of like I grew up between Los Angeles and Little Rock, Arkansas for the most part. And in LA, I went to some schools that were wild. Wow. Like we were in the gifted program and we didn't have all of our books. It's like, well, shoot, if that's where we at, where's everybody else at? I knew we're there. They were, you know what I mean? It was like one of the schools I went to was so crazy that, it's not even crazy. It's just how it was that, sometimes if we were really hungry, we would have the sacrificial lamb go to the other end of the school and yell fight just so everyone would run to jump in so that we could get lunch. Because if you were at the back of the line, if you got there late, you didn't get lunch, right? And so and like my first day there at that school, shout out to Audubon. I'm sure they're great now. With them. But back then, like my first day, I went to the cafeteria, it was an outdoor cafeteria, and there was a fight on the tables, picnic table style. There was a fight on the tables, and then like the police officers got up there to break up the fight, and then someone tried to take the police officer's gun. Well, they did take, they didn't try. They took the police officer's gun, and they went to shoot everybody on the table. It just so happened like they forgot about the safety, right? However, they had good technique. Like I remember thinking that I was like they're like, it was just like click, 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 And so they had that. I mean, like I later learned how good their technique was. I was like, man, that was some good technique for them in the spur of the moment, But that was my first day. And then going from that to San Monica High School, shout out Samo, where there was a lot, it was very culturally diverse, but you also had a lot of people with a lot of affluence or whose parents had a lot of affluence there. And then go into the last half of high school in Little Rock, Arkansas, and then going to college in Massachusetts, it just painted a picture for me that, sometimes I need to change how I talk in order for people to get the message. And so it's not so much that the message is changing, is that how I communicate to those people is changing. Because if I talk to people in Massachusetts, even in the same voice tones that I talk to people in Arkansas, they just couldn't understand this. They literally can't understand this.
But then will the real Ezzy stand up then? I mean, like, who are you?
I think that whether it's my friends in California or Massachusetts or Arkansas, they all feel the same things about me. You know, I think it's just how I communicate, because different people are looking through life with different lenses, and they have different experiences, right? And so like who we are is shaped by our experiences, and that's also the filter with which we look through life. You know, I can always tell sports people because they use a lot of sports analogies, right? So if I really want to get through to them on a really important point, then it makes sense for me to use a sports analogy because it'll just increase the likelihood of them
I
understanding.
don't feel like that's code switching.
Yeah, but that's a good point you make of like a willingness, right? Like to whatever degree, like your end result like is bigger than the process it takes to get there, and so you have a willingness to adapt or to change or to take on certain monotones, whatever case may be, because you know what the end goal is. You know, the willingness, you know, like, but at what point, it's something I've been asking myself a lot, at what point do I sacrifice too much in my willingness that I've now lost the power of what I'm trying to do? And it starts with what we started this conversation, like knowing like what am I grounded on at the beginning of it all. But do you guys think about it in that way? Like as you, like the little nuances of like, I should say this or I could say this, but I'm gonna be willing in whatever capacity to do it differently because the end result, or?
Nah, I just let it flow, man. I feel like, you know, I've learned so much throughout my lifetime. So little backstory about me. I grew up in Chicago, in the hood, like, you know, so you know, you had to be able to carry yourself a certain way in order to walk through these different hoods, because at any given chance you in a different pocket. So from that standpoint, I'm able to, you know, be me and walk through there with confidence and not worried about what's going to happen because I believe in myself. So I went from Chicago to North Dakota when I went off to college. So it was a huge culture shock to me, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, so I went from, you know, majority African American in the hood to 97% white people. And when I first got out there, I started talking. Yeah. Oh yeah, I am who I am. You know what I mean? And but the thing is, me being who I was at that time, people couldn't understand what I was saying. So I had to be able to adapt and adjust. I had to learn new things. I had to learn how to communicate with different people. I had to learn how to communicate with people from Fargo. I had to learn how to communicate with people from Chicago. And that's all about learning and adaptation and not being stuck with who you are at the current moment, but also progressing and evolving. Basically the same thing that we're learning today.
But there's a lot of kids, and I'm just thinking about my own experience working with kids, young people, anyone, right, where it's like, nah, that's played out. I'm not gonna change who I am. Or like, what would you say to try to kind of break that down in a manner where it's like, I'm not asking you to lose who you are. I'm trying to get you to see how progression can happen. Like, I know a lot of people that are stuck in that place of, right, I'm just gonna be me, to their hindrance, you know, where you're saying it in such a way that's positive.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, you know, the main thing I would say is you don't have to change who you are. You can continue to be you, but take every situation that you're involved in as a lesson learned. So just in case this situation were to come back around full circle, you know how to handle yourself. You know how to communicate with people. That's why I love talking to different types of people, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to live this life as great and as, I guess, fulfilled as possible, right? But at the end of the day, if we're not able to share what we're doing and being able to communicate with people what we're doing, who we are, what we're about, it's no way that we can actually help promote change at the end of the day.
To his point, and exactly that, I wrote down one thing you said which was powerful to me, which was you have to know how to negotiate. I think a lot of what you're saying is negotiation. Like, do you guys negotiate in your day-to-day, week-to-week? Like, what does negotiation look like for you?
I negotiate a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm working with people from different perspectives and different stakeholders. And so I have to mishmash what this person wants, align it to this person, and get them to see some synergy there.
For the sake of break down stakeholder in the way you use it.
So for me, stakeholders will be K-12 education, and it could be the system, right? It could be the superintendent down to the classroom teachers, down to the students. Then I'm also working with industry. So I'm with the Cerners and the Burns and McDonald folks and all of those, down to entrepreneurs as well. So small business, big business. and then working with post-secondary too, 2-year, 4-year, which
So
there are varying perspectives there as well.
Anyone who can have some skin in the game, stakeholder. Okay,
right.
cool.
Stakeholders to my particular business sense of where I work every day.
So what does that negotiation look like?
So for me, sometimes it's bringing all 3 of those types of players to one table because surprisingly, not everybody in education talk to each other. Sometimes 2-year and 4-year don't even really talk, and they're getting like the mantle from each other, right? So sometimes it's bringing them all to the table just to talk about ideas, what one entity might want to do, or a problem and a challenge that maybe we all can work together on solving. And then massaging the room, right? The give and take. So what it is that you want? Does it solve a need for you? Is it recreating something or reinventing the wheel? We don't want to do that. Just really kind of vibing with the goals.
So are you negotiating time, money, resources, like all the above?
Resources, programming, all of the above.
Is it a zero-sum game? Like in your guys' world, your life, is it a zero-sum game? You know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I don't believe it's a break-even type of thing.
Like, is there enough to go around?
I believe it's enough to go around because it's like an interchangeable. It's like a barter system of IP. Like we exchange a little bit, we bounce ideas back and forth until we evolve as individuals.
I'm gonna learn something from you, just as you're gonna learn something from me, just from us having the conversation.
We may not get the same value that we gave. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We may not get the same value
it's different.
that I gave you that I'm getting from you.
It's different. Yeah.
Because you might come to me as an industry professional saying, we need talent. We don't have enough people to hire. So I'm in this because I want to make sure kids learn about my business and they think about it as a career and they join it. Well, at the end, after talking to everybody, you might realize that's only a piece of the pie. There's some other socioeconomic things going on. Right. And maybe you walk away feeling more altruistic. Like, well, maybe I won't get people walking into my particular business, but they're going to learn about my field.
I think it's the same, the pressure. I'm thinking about like the pressure, which I think it comes from, and why we're having this conversation about code switching, is that there's some elusive system, right, that makes us feel like we have to do things a certain way, that there's only certain things that we need or we want, so we try to negotiate for those things. But like, do you feel like you can step aside those as you like realize, okay, what we're negotiating, like it's not a zero-sum game, Or do you feel like the influence of like what a system prioritizes makes people, like holds people to those strongholds of like, no, I know this is what I need. Like, how do you break beyond that mold?
What's interesting to me is we're all products of the system, and like hearing everybody talk and their perspective on code switching shows that we're a product of this, like you said, elusive system, right? And so it's hard to quantify for us because we feel torn. But I think that's the thing you gotta not negotiate is yourself. Like you could be a great marketer and salesperson, right? And I'm gonna sell you what you need for your perspective, and I'm gonna sell you what you need. But that still doesn't mean, like you said, water is water. I can change my packaging and how I deliver something to you for a sales pitch, but I'm not gonna change me and who I am, the way I talk, just to make that deal.
And then I believe it also goes like back to the term of, the nature through nurture. We all have this genetic code that makes us us. But then it's like we have an environment that nurtures us as well. So it's like, what are we taking from the environment to evolve who we want to be? So it's like,
no, I was just gonna say I maybe like, so I have a lot of friends who are very much like, I'm not changing anything about me. I am changing nothing about me, right? I just at all. Like I have a friend who just came and stayed with me who she's like, I'm not changing a daggone thing. But
is it to her? Is it to her detriment? Do you feel like okay, like you're doing okay, so I'll let you vibe? Or
I'll say this. I mean, I'll say that
it's possible. Hey, yeah, it's possible. Yeah. I mean, if you tend to be stern in your ways and stay a certain way, it's possibility that you may miss out on the blessing. And blessings come from many different directions. So blessing can be just that little bit of knowledge that you gain from talking to someone that is different from you, but what they're saying is something that you may have heard before, may not have heard, that you can kind of resonate with because it showed up in a certain situation.
But you gotta be open for it. You know
Right,
what I mean?
yeah, and that's the thing.
And I think that, like, my take is that I think that sometimes we throw out there, you should be your true self.
Yeah.
But you don't know everybody's
frame
true
that. Ooh,
self.
you be like, ooh.
like, like, you know what I mean? Like, I say that I have some friends that I would say definitely you don't need to be your true self. You do not, because your true self is
gonna get you in trouble.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I'm still friends with them because that's just, you know what I mean?
But here's the thing I'm challenged with is like however we define growth, right? Like must we surface everything to grow? You know what I mean? Or can we navigate and can we keep a few things like, I know they exist, I know they're there, I'm just gonna keep them out of sight? Or must we include those things where it's like, I wouldn't show nobody that, but must we include that to get where we're trying to go?
Gotta include. You gotta really dig deep and know who you are at your core. So as far as, knowing who you are at your core, you have to include every single thing that you have going for you, your strength, your weaknesses, what you want to improve on, what you need to improve on. I feel like if you kind of hide in certain parts of who you are as a person, that's kind of limiting your chance to grow because and yeah because so it's like in the business world, you can't walk in the business world and necessarily be who you were years ago when you grew up in the hood. You know what I mean? So a part of that is actually being who you are, but also learning and adapting and adjusting, like I was talking about. But then again, being able to implement that on a daily basis, knowing that, all right, so I know who I'm going to be around. I know who I am as a person. I just have to make sure that they understand me through my own language.
So let's take a different approach to it, because I think everyone has conquered this challenge of code switching. So I think the other side of it, and one I feel a lot, is like, now you know what people value from you because of your ability to do that. Like I've been put in a position where I could clearly see they were using me as the eloquent, articulate young black man. Young, articulate.
Yes.
Do you venture down for the good of the cause? Do you throw the sign up and be like, I'm not doing it?
Why can't
like,
you call it for what it is?
I do. I mean, I have. And I think that's, maybe I haven't, and that's not honest. I haven't as, I don't want to use the word aggressively, but for the sake of, I haven't as aggressively as I should. Like from a position though of like, I realize that what you think is valuable of me, let me be honest with you about the value you're trying to pull from it. I haven't. I think just my desire to make it, right? As we talk about like the weight of a system, my desire, but I felt it, like what do you do like when you feel that? Like do you say, okay, I'm gonna take this on because I know, like willingness, right? Like I know for the good of the cause, a lot of people use, this will get us to this end goal. Or you like, I'll lose myself along the way if I take that journey.
I believe it goes back to the innovation toolbox. If we use our mind as a utility, a tool that help empower the people around us, like, of course, people are going to use us. We're going to use people that are considered tools to us, So it's just a matter of how can we use that tool? I mean, it's like we don't want to approach it to the point where we just selfish. Hey, I just want to help myself. We want to bring our toolbox out in order to help people in a way where it's mutually beneficial.
And I think that's the love of it, right? You want to be able to, but I'm talking, and I appreciate that. But I'm talking about like when it's going down. How they about to try to play it. Oh yeah. Like of course, like I can say authentically, Danielle, I want to use you. I hope you can say authentically, you want to use me. That's the beauty, right? But when it's like,
that's why I said call it for what it is. I in that situation, I would make certain that, okay, am I this spokesperson because of what I've shown forth, or are there others who have the same skill set, but you see me as articulating either your ideas or the ideas better, and how can we bring that other person along too? Like, you know, it's kind of like the Jackson 5 mentality, right? Like, just don't be Michael for the sake of being Michael. And then and you look back and be like, what happened to Jackson 5, right? You know? So I think you got to be strategic, right? If you gonna pave the way, but you got to bring people with you.
Lift as you rise,
Right.
a good friend of
Right.
mine always says. What about you, Joe? How do you go about it, man? Like, when you know it's there, like you can tell, and if you, to whatever degree, be willing to share an experience if you have one, like how do you navigate it?
You know, I'm always a person where, you know, ever since I've been on two different sides of the spectrum, I always try to go into every situation wondering what am I going to learn from it. So, you know, what certain people may view as, you know, me giving up and giving in to what's going on at the current moment, I mean, sometimes that has to happen in order for you to grow, in order for you to experience something that you wouldn't normally experience on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, if you go into it, I mean, you have to pretty much go into every situation optimistic, man. Like, okay, so, you know, it may not look as good, you know, coming from a different eye, but at the end of the day, what am I getting from it? What am I going to get from it? What am I going to learn from this situation to where if it's presented later on down the road or in a different fashion, I'm going to be able to. But
that comes from like a firm understanding, and maybe it's elusive, maybe I'm wrong here, but it comes like from a quasi-firm understanding of what you're trying to get to, right? Yeah. All of us serve in some capacity and for our own selves of trying to help people find their way, help people find the end result, find the path. Like whenever you're not sure what the end result is yet, but you're trying to figure out the path to take, like how do you navigate that?
Yeah, man, I was one of the things I was going to say a little bit earlier is that I think that as people try to, you know, navigate, you know, how they're going to act in a setting, whether that's corporate or otherwise, I think it starts with, you know, your personal goals, right? So you have to, one, define your goals and what you want to get out of that situation, where you want to get to, and then you have to work backwards from there. And it's shocking to me with Rise Fast, I work with a lot of young professionals, and before that, even with the youth leadership development stuff I did, I worked with a lot of young professionals, you know, a lot of youth. And whether it's young professionals or whether it's youth or whether it's, you know, actual professionals, you know, it's a shockingly few number of people who've really dedicated a lot of thought to where they want to be at. And so if you take that point and work backwards from there, then how you act becomes very easy. It becomes very easy to say, I want to get promoted to this level and then leave and do my own thing. Exactly. If I want to do my own thing, then I've got to get to this level so I can get investment. And they're like, oh, he was the blah, 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 blah. Or I need to get to this proficiency level, which means that I need to get into this department. In order to get into that department, I need to build relationships with these people, which means they need to be comfortable with me, which means that I need to be someone that they feel like they want to take under their wing. Right. And so like once you define that, then it gets a lot easier, you know, but I think what happens is people tend to struggle with themselves as it relates to their actions. And in my opinion, you know, you shouldn't be the who of who you are should not be defined by the words you use. And it shouldn't be defined by the types of phrases, you know, your instant replies to emails. It should transcend that. And so that's just kind of how I take it.
Hey, I would love if it did, you know. Like we would all love if we felt like at the end of the day we laid our head like knowing who we are transcends any one transaction we have on a day-to-day basis. But we're defined by those so aggressively by society, man, and by I don't want society's too elusive, man, but we're defined so aggressively.
Okay, so here's my take. I'm gonna say that we're not to be combative. I'm a nice person, right? Very combative. But I'm gonna say that we're defined by society because we haven't defined ourselves in a lot of cases. And so I would take that one like strand of thought, and I'd ask you to hold on to that, and then add it to the fact that we as human beings make judgments of people for our survival. right? So it's a survival trait that if I see you, I'm gonna size you up. The same way that the Neanderthals had to look at the saber-toothed tiger and be like, let me size him up versus, a puma or a dog or a prehistoric woolly mammoth, right? It's a survival trait of like, let me size this person up and let me take the visual cues and then any other information, any other data I can pull from them, from the shirt collar to the shoes or whatever, the body language, the movement, same thing that happens in Little Rock and Chicago, and let me make an assessment on whether they're soft, whether they're hard, whether they're someone that I can be friends with, whether they're someone I'm not going to be friends with. And so you have to think about those two things and kind of balance them as you move through life.
Yeah, it's crazy, man, because I definitely feel where you're coming from, especially when you put it in those terms. Because, I mean, like I said before, growing up in Chicago, you definitely have to make sure that you're ready for whatever situation you're involved in. Like I said, it's different corners, different people on that corner, different gangs all over the place. So you definitely have to be able to make sure that you're able to kind of read the situation and know what's going on. But at what point do you kind of grow and evolve from that to go from reading the situation and know what's going on to actually giving yourself to whatever's going on at
this
the
this
current
is what I was
moment?
going to ask you, Joe, is, and to take a point of yours, reverse engineering, like, what do you need to survive, right? That's kind of like the premise of this, like, to survive at that point, I needed these things. I know I'm not going to mess with that saber-toothed tiger. Like, at this point in your life, what do you need to survive? Or maybe how has it evolved over the span of your life, over your work?
I love that question, but I want to take a next step further, like knowing what it is or identifying what it is that you need to survive, and then understanding where you exerting your consistency. Because everybody exerts their consistency in different ways. Like a producer is going to exert their consistency in making beats all the time. A great communicator is going to exert their consistency in developing relationships and building and maintaining good friendships and whatnot. Educators going to do the same with children and what. So it's like, my question is like, where do you exert your consistency? I know we all do, different things. So it's like, where do you exert your consistency?
With what I've been able to accomplish over my lifetime so far, growing up, like, not playing football until I was a junior in high school, not knowing how to communicate before that time, but then, being pretty much the quarterback of the defense, I have to be able to control it. I have to be able to control this environment where it can definitely get rough and get sketchy. And at any given time, if everyone's down on the same page, then we all gonna lose. So I've actually had the opportunity to be a leader and to take command and can take control of the situation. So I feel like, that kind of helped me. That kind of helped propel me in my lifetime. So I know when, as a team, I know when, I may have to take a step back and let everybody else be who they are. But I also know at the same time, I have to step up and be the leader and be, the voice of reason or the show by example. So, it's just my experience. The different experiences that we go through is what help tailor us who we are, and what helps us, be able to adapt, adjust, know when to give, know when to just sit back and relax and listen and let other people lead. Sometimes you don't have to always be, that person that, the rah-rah and talk and speak, and because you got to give other people a chance to talk too, because at the end of the day, that's how you learn. And people tend to get tired of, hearing the same voice every single time. So it's just all about being able to know when to talk, when to speak, when to sit back, listen, learn. And, it's kind of, I'm just a person that's into growth. Like, the only way I'm going to grow is by either reading, studying, and talking to different people. And I think that I've been able to do that, every step of the way throughout my life. So I don't feel like I'm not ready for any type of situation. I feel like everything that I've been through, every person that I talk to, help propel me towards that.
You can adapt some way into it.
Oh,
I love his question. I'm curious of your answer. Where do you exert your consistency?
So I would say that I exert my consistency with my experience, my lived experience. Mm-hmm. And then that includes education, but also upbringing. So I work with students in the heart of Kansas City, and I let them know I don't just look like you, I am you. My mom doesn't have a GED, right? She never finished high school, but I'm in a doctoral program right now. But let me tell you why I chose that, why I'm on this path, how I got there. And I didn't get there, you know, pretending to be something that I'm not either, right? So I share my lived experience and I'm consistent with it. That's who I am. Now, I do evolve and grow.
Yeah, that narrative changes.
I wouldn't be a mature person, right? If I didn't learn from people around me. But I have to wear my lived experience because that's who I am.
That's beautiful. Let's transition to it. So whether you had a packaged idea of your life story or whether you've thought about it in a way since this conversation, I want to ask very directly, what part of your life story do you feel like has meant the most to you?
I think for me, just what I just said, coming from a mom who isn't confident in herself in education and feeling like I had to, like she wanted me to be everything that she wasn't education-wise. And so that has meant a lot to me for me to make her proud in that way and to take that love that she's put into me and make a product out of it, right? Man. She's calling me Dr. Binion when I was like 5. I mean, and she has spoken into existence. And at the time, she thought she meant medical doctor. And I did go to college for a biology degree and did all that because my mom kept saying, you know, she introduces me that way. And I've always been like, Mommy, you kind of crazy. Stop doing that. But
we live up to that.
But I'm living up to that.
It's so powerful. We live up to that. We live up to what people, God willing, our parents, our family, our community says this is what you're gonna be.
It's for her.
You're gonna be great. You gonna go out now. All you do is go out there and get it. And
Oh yeah, man. Absolutely.
Tell how many kids you got, Joe?
2 kids.
Man.
My daughter, she's 13. My son's 9.
What where you at right now with them? What do you talk to them about?
Legos, video games. I mean, you know, I feel like, you know, in due time, I'll be able to have a conversation with them about really, really serious issues, or, you know, to be able to, you know, show them a different path than what they're on. I just want them to be who they are for the moment. Yeah, I don't want to be known as that dad that, you know, he stopped me every step of the way from doing what I wanted to do because he wanted to show me who he wanted me to be. The right way to do it. Yeah. So, you know, I feel like, you know, if you let people be who they are while also showing them different ways or different things that they can do, that's how you get a chance to mold people into who they really want to be.
Do you think that train of thought came from the privilege you experienced in being a pro athlete, or do you think that without that experience you would be that way as a father? You know
what? That train of thought came about as I was growing up. Because in Chicago, I mean, you grow up a certain type of way. You know, you grow up, you know, having to be on the defense and having to be prepared for situations and how you're going to respond to them. But then again, you meet people along the way that teach you something different, a different way to look, a different way to, you know, not look, but a different way to look at certain situations, a different way to just be, period. And as far as growing and things like that. So, It was just, you know, growing up and learning new things and meeting different people to where I take little bitty pieces from this person and this person and that person. And I know that I am who I am, but I also know that I've evolved and I'm able to actually have a conversation.
What has been your biggest failure? Because you had to have failed somewhere, man, for, you know, just the perspective, right?
Yeah.
And to survive through it and realize.
Sophomore year in high school, not making the basketball team because basketball was my first love. Yeah, that's it. Like I didn't care about nothing else like basketball because it kept me out of trouble. And, you know, I wasn't really, you know, one for school. Like I wanted to do the bare minimum so I can graduate. And then I don't know what I'm going to do, but I just know I'm going to be done with school. And basketball was just my way of, you know, just having an outlet, being able to do things that I love to do. And just have fun with it. So not making the basketball team truly crushed me, but it also opened up a door for me to do something completely different. Football, that's where football came in. And I feel like if I didn't close that chapter with basketball, I wouldn't have opened up and be super open to playing football.
To the life you have now.
Yeah.
All right, and sorry, the question, what part of your life story do you feel like it's meant the most to you?
Man, my transition and going to North Dakota.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, it was
I'm
it
sure.
was just a life altering decision. But I embraced it though, man. I think at that time I was ready for change, man. Being in Chicago and being around people who gang bang. Sometimes you may be talking to them right now, but then the next day they dead and gone. And it's like, what did they do in order to put themselves in that position to where now I can't even speak to them no more? You know what I mean? Like, what did they do? What didn't they do? And I felt like the thing that they didn't do was actually get outside of Chicago and learn something different. Because if you only sit in that same neighborhood or that same environment throughout your whole lifetime, you really have no
positive influences.
And there's guilt that come along with that too, right? So I'm from St. Louis.
Yeah.
I'm not from an affluent neighborhood or family. And sometimes I ask myself, what's the difference between me and somebody else that grew up on Maple or in my family, my cousins? And so I think it's opportunity, really. It's mindset and opportunity.
Mindset first and foremost.
Can you pinpoint which ones might have done it? Which ones might have gotten you out of there?
Which mindset or opportunity?
Which opportunities?
Oh, the opportunity to have the education that I had. So as he mentioned, gifted program. I was in a gifted program in St. Louis. There were 3 schools, an elementary, middle, and a high school. And I was tracked for the gifted program in 3rd grade. So that was a completely different educational experience that I've ever had. I would say to this day, it's the best educational experience I've had, even up until this point right now.
What made it so unique?
Kids from all over. So St. Louis is really segregated based on socioeconomic status, where you live denotes that, right? Well, the kids in this school were from all over the town, from all over the city. They looked completely different from each other. And no one talked about that. We just was there to be kids, to learn, and it wasn't an issue. Did you go to a
different school in the 3rd grade, or you were?
So I was in the 3rd grade. I took an IQ test. So you do an IQ test and a lottery for Kennard Classical Junior Academy. Kennard, McKinley, and then Metro is the high school. And so you take the IQ test, you join the lottery, then you get in. And the whole goal was instead of skipping kids a grade when they're gifted or doing pull-out programs, they just had a school where they taught you a year ahead. So that was a challenge because I went back to high school, regular comprehensive high school, which was actually the first black high school west of the Mississippi in St. Louis. It was started in like 1875. And it was segregated when I went there in the 2000s, in 98. So I went from like this really kind of holistic educational experience where all like skipped a grade technically and we're all loving and living together. And then I went to an all black high school that kind of mirrors what he was saying, didn't have books. We didn't have books to take home. The smart kids, quote unquote, was tracked for college prep. So we were on the 3rd floor with air conditioning. And everybody else didn't have air conditioning or books or anything. So it was a very weird experience for me, and I felt guilt a lot of times because of the educational experience I had in elementary and middle. And then I saw my high school like, this isn't right? But what am I gonna do? Like, I'm a kid, right?
So how can you feel guilty?
Well, you feel guilty that people don't have the same opportunity as you. So who picked me out and said, you take this IQ test and you get tracked for this program? Whereas someone else could be just as successful, right? Because I think smartness is gained and earned through your experience and your exposure, right? Like, yes, you might be born with a certain level of, skill or intelligence, right? But you can get smart over time is what I feel. And I feel like some of the same students in my high school would have absolutely benefited and been in a different place if they went to my elementary or middle school.
These same people that you're talking about, do you think that they were more open or as open as you were as far as to learn different things?
I think nobody presented it to them.
Okay. Well,
like they were in the third grade too, and nobody said to them.
I was reading,
Hey,
I wish I could remember what it was, but it was talking about gifted programs, and you may, correct me if I'm wrong, you may know a little bit more about this, but that teachers and parents hand select to then be tested. Whereas this school was adopting a model where every single kid got to go through it because of the bias that is behind, unconscious or not, behind when you hand pick kids. Versus if you give every kid a chance to go through that, then you know for a fact the kids that, but I don't know.
Well, why can't school just look like that for everybody?
That's what I was gonna say. The thing I'm challenged with is that why can't, you're saying then there's more that we can do for each kid, then why can't we do more for each?
It was like an inquiry-based, project-based, teamwork-based school. Why can't every school look like that? It's crazy to think that only certain people will benefit from engaging in learning, right? Or engagement, period.
And it's interesting how growth, it tends to make you an outsider, and then it makes you think how can you make this being an outsider a good thing? Because it's like, of course, you're basically having more access to things that these people, who are in the in crowd where you started from don't have, and you became an outsider. It's like, how much effect do you believe that you have on those who are still in that
That
in
is
crowd?
absolutely true. So with the cousins, I'm now, she gifted and she got a different school, right? Yeah. And you're right, you become an outsider and you're trying to manage that, which is part of the culture.
Yeah, that's so true.
But at the end of the day, also we're presented different opportunities because different people show levels of potential. So someone may handpick you, and you may feel different, but it's something that you're doing that is the reason why you were picked over the person that's sitting next to you, whether they deserve it or not. It's something that you did or something that you've shown that made that person handpick you. So then you have to think about not necessarily feeling guilty because I was picked. What did I do in order to be picked to where that person wasn't picked? And how do I keep that thing going to where I'm constantly projecting myself to where people they see me as who I am and they see me as to where I can go years down the line and how they can help me.
And I was always getting in trouble because my mama couldn't afford the uniform, and I was dressed out of uniform all the time, didn't have lunch money, so on and so forth. This teacher took a liking to me, and she told my mom that I was different. My mom got offended. She was like, "What you mean she different? Like, I don't want her in your class no more," And then she's trying to explain to my mom, no, I'm saying she's different, smart, gifted. Like, a good way, she needs to be tested. My mom's still like, tested? You saying something wrong with my daughter? And, and so it took several conversations with that teacher for her to get my mom to take me to go get the IQ test. Because my mom didn't trust her.
So my mom almost got in the way of all of it.
Right.
And I remember taking the bus ride, like we're on the public transportation.
Yeah.
She's like, you're going to take a special people test today.
But this is so true, especially since I've been back in Kansas City working, and for great reason. Vulnerable communities do not trust because so many bad things have happened when people came in to try to change something.
And it was a white teacher.
Yeah.
And my mom just didn't trust what she was trying to say to her.
Do you know, have you had this conversation with your mom or maybe you just know, was there some experience that caused her to be cautious, or was it just the life journey? She felt like that teacher was trying to take me away from her because the teacher also offered, I had a challenge in math, right, too. So this teacher identified me as gifted, but she said, I also want to tutor her in the summer. So can she come to my house and I'm going to beef up her math skills? My mom said no. It was a chance of a lifetime, right?
Just the pure separation.
Absolutely no. Yeah. Absolutely no. But I found that teacher last year. Yeah. Searched her, found her daughter. I remember her saying her daughter's name. She was pregnant when I was in the third grade. And I found her through her daughter on Facebook.
Have you reconnected with her?
Yes. Told her she changed the trajectory of my life at that point in third grade. But also it allowed me to realize, one, the humility of that experience, but also, as you were saying, the inequity. So I've had these conversations with her on Facebook about that.
It's like, do you think that the traditional mindsets of those who came before us kind of put a limit on, or try to set a limit on how much we evolve?
How so?
Like, it means of, you know, it's like how you said your mom's, you know, it's like this person was trying to help you with your math, but your mom's way of thinking or whatnot, like, prevented you from being in that, you know? But in your mind, you were like, damn, I think that this could help me so much, you know? So it's like having a traditional mindset that is limiting you from evolving. And then it's like, how do you break that traditional mindset and evolve in ways that you believe that you're capable of doing?
Goes to your point of, and I don't think you use this exact word, but being an outcast, whether it's to your family, your friends, your community, your parents, whomever. Like, and I don't know if it's like a willingness or you just intuitively know it, but like, even if it's your own mom, to be willing to say, I'm trying to reach for better. I don't know. It's like that's the livelihood for so many people. Their lifeblood is through the maintenance of that relationship. I don't know that.
I think what you're saying is real. Like, it was limiting. It was limiting, and I continued to struggle with math. And then in high school, when my mom saw that I was in a subpar high school, right?
Now she's like, okay.
And then she's like, well, dang, what are we gonna do? So she hired a math tutor. Like, we really didn't have any extra money, so she was feeding this lady, right, to pay her.
Look, can we do it?
But then she acknowledged to me, she said, you know what, Miss Jasper always said you needed a little extra help in math, and that she felt like you was capable, but I wasn't with Miss Jasper at that parochial school until the 3rd grade. So I had her 1 year before she tracked me for the gifted testing. So Ms. Jasper noticed that there was a gap in the previous education, right? And so my mom finally acknowledged, I understand now what Ms. Jasper was saying, because you're articulating it to me, you know, when you come home from school, when you calculus class. So,
man, I'm a firm believer, like, there will be more chances, more opportunities. Like, and these ideas might battle each other. As much as I'm a firm believer in divine intervention, like that, I don't know, some people phrase it like you'll make the same mistake in different ways until you learn the lesson. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of look about the other way of it. Like, there will be different ways of that opportunity to happen. I don't know, maybe not in forever, but I think more than one. I think to say there's only one, that's so cruel.
learn a lesson.
Yeah.
Right.
To say like it only happened once, that's a cruel idea. You know, have you guys heard?
I think there are once in a life chance opportunities, but the opportunity to learn, I absolutely vibe with you on that.
Have you guys heard the story about whenever there was a guy? I don't think it's real, but there's a guy like drowning in the water. And a boat came by, and they said, "You want us to save you?" And the guy was like, "No, God's gonna come and get me." And so they left. Then another boat, then another boat came, and he said, "You want us to save you?" He said, "No, God's gonna come and get me." And then another boat, the third boat came, and he's like, "No, God's gonna come and get me." And he drowned, and he went to heaven. And he was like, "God, why didn't you save me?" He said, "I sent you 3 boats." Yeah, we don't recognize opportunities when they're right in front of us. Pat, I want to give you a chance. I know you're with us every week, and so you've shared your story already, but I want to give you the same chance, man, before we break for a meal. Is there some part of your life story that has meant the most to you?
Having my daughter, man, you know, I never thought I would have kids, you know, but then when I had my daughter, it was just a life-changing experience. It just opened my mind, my heart, my soul, and it just made me want to look at, damn, what am I leaving behind? Like, you never know. Like, I could die. I don't want to say anything bad, but, you know, I never know what could happen to me. But it's like, I do know what I'm leaving behind, you know? So how am I going to cultivate the mind of this person that I'm leaving behind, you know, and be able to still create an impact that's big enough to change the world?
Yeah. That's a good one to end on.
Right on.
Let's enjoy the good eats of Chef J.
Chef J.
My people, it's time to move out.
So today we're making some fried chicken parmesan. It's one of my favorite recipes. I kind of just like revised this recipe a couple of weeks ago, and I kind of wanted to really share this with my new friends here at 8080 in Level 3 Studio, so we can see what they think about it.
Fly away with me, it's time to fly away, fly away. His blood set me free, it's time to fly away. While I'm slipping like an absent thought, rollerblade skipping, skidding along the top.
Today I definitely am gonna eat this. I usually pass and I usually skip up just so everybody can eat, but look at that. Can't pass up on that.
I remember being so high I didn't know that the low could unfold, sleeping with eyes ago.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
He said, I think I have outdone myself this time.
Yes, I really did. I think I did, man.
I think I have outdone myself this time.
Oh my God, this feels good. Okay, all right.
Take a break. We're on your schedule, man.
What's up, man? What's the deal? How you doing today?
Dude, just when you eat that good, Chef Jay, like good conversation, good food, it's like you feel like you're almost floating. You just cruising, man. Innovators Toolbox, man. What's one thing? And it's, I've had a lot of fun jamming with you lately, man. It seems like it's a lot of self-growth, a lot of reflection. You know, as you go through that, man, in the moment you're at right now, like if you could leave one thing behind, what would it be, man?
Dare to be different. That's what I'm gonna leave behind this week. Dare to be different. Don't fit in the norm. You know, be yourself. Be who you are. Be different. You know what I'm saying? Don't fall in the norm. That's all I can say. Dare to be different. Be like me. Be different. And follow me. Follow me.
Man, I would say upgrade your tools. You know, upgrade the stuff so you can play at a high level. To me, that's what these mics are. For you guys, chilling, like this kind of stuff. Don't need to go too crazy, but just up the tools if you need them. The toolbox, man, or the bat belt. You know, like like whatever that kit is. So that kit is like our nutrition and our like stuff we carry around. Like I literally have a fanny pack. You know,
Right.
like you can put some fun stuff in there.
Is that real?
Yeah, upgrade those tools as well.
I love it, man.
With food and Chef Jay.
What is one thing you would leave behind in the Innovators Toolbox, man?
Don't beat yourself up when you fail. Instead, you know, use it as motivation to fuel your next move.
A lot of people are scared to fail, man. Yeah, they scared of worrying about what other people think of them when they do fail. When there's a lesson learned, and you know, when you do fail, you know what to do, what not to do in order to prepare yourself the next time. It's awesome, man. Yeah, embrace the failure.
Hey, that's dope. Yeah, to simplify, y'all should have did that. Embrace failure.
Jay, the man, the myth, the legend.
Other J.
That's Jay.
You were washing your hands. You were washing your hands during that segment.
JJ.
Brushing your teeth during that segment. I'd say find the practitioners. Find the practitioners. Those are the best ones to be with. Also, if you're a dreamer, like if you're one that only has the big vision, learn how to reverse engineer things so that the practitioners can help you achieve it.
People are just gonna go out and do it, you know? Like, tell me what to do so I can go do it. Dude, that has transformed my life, man. And I'm so grateful, man. I can never, to any of you all, man, I can never express enough gratitude, man. But that day when we were at the crib and you were like, we're gonna start a podcast, you know? And now here we are, you know what I mean? Like, holy hell. And so, man, I'm so thankful, dude, that you were like, let's just go do it, man. We'll figure everything else out. Well, I'll say that, I don't know if this even makes sense, but there's no place like home. You know, it's like a lot of our conversation, man, made me think like how powerful your home is. A lot of who we are, you know, being in Chicago, or she talked about St. Louis, or she talked about her mom, you know, like that place of home holds every value we believe, we were taught, what we come to understand about the world. There's so much we can learn from our home, whatever home is to you, however you define your home. But there's so much we can learn from that, man. So take time to soak that up. Don't run from. A lot of people run from their home, where they're from, abandon it. But there's no place like home. Learn what it has to teach you.
And this is the man who runs the show.
Nah, man, I just sit back and watch it happen. So I told her, can we create a moment in a moment? I told a lot of people I'd be more intentional on Instagram about what I'm doing. Like, you never put out enough content. So we're gonna do it now, in a moment.
You send me this one, bro.
Yeah, I'll send you this one. All right, so we just wrapped up Innovator's Toolbox, where we went around and everyone said one thing, one reflection that they would take away from the conversation. Hurry real quick, 5 seconds, what did everyone say? What are some things you said?
Dare to be different.
Dare to be different?
Embrace failure.
Yeah.
I like that one.
I said, I know, that's what I said, hurry up, and no one said anything.
Now we don't know.
Should have said it on camera.
Did people forget what they said?
You gotta post that one.
He made me hit the X.
We'd be talking over each other, wouldn't we?
No, that's okay. But just like, just like
do that.
Just like shut it up. Just whatever.
Love life.
Yeah, just like shut it up. Okay. All right, we just finished up the third and final segment of the show, Innovator's Toolbox, where we go around and everyone says one reflection that they would leave behind in the generations for tomorrow. Everyone say the thing that you said.
And dare to be different.
Oh.
Yo, you guys remember when Chef Jay? Remember when Chef Jay the other day? They were like, yeah, so what's one thing that you would do to like change somebody's life? He's like, first of all, follow me. Follow me. Also, eat my food. Also.
All right, let's
Nice job, man.
let's close this out properly.
Yes.
They say that there are 3 levels of conversation. Level 1 is when people talk about other people. Level 2 is when people talk about events. There's nothing wrong with either of those, but this is Level 3 Studio. Thank you all so very much for joining another episode of Level 3 Studio, where we fed your body, fed your mind, and without a doubt, fed your soul.
Way to go.
Chef Jay.
Way to go. Way to go.
80 Jay.
Hey, I ain't cried. Good.
Didn't get you there?
I heard about that. I survived.
Suspenseful poems, suspenders in every word, wearing overalls, overdosing, trained as a locomotive, conductor of commotion, controlling the road we on. I know we are. I remember being so high, I didn't know that the load could unfold, sleeping with eyes ago.